Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Vanessa McBride may die in a surprise attack, but the truth behind her fate is far more tangled than anyone anticipates. It begins in a quiet suburb just beyond the old industrial strip, where the faded letters of the McBride family estate still hang crookedly over rusted iron gates. The estate, once a monument to wealth and prominence, has become a decaying relic. Inside, Doug McBride paces nervously as his sister Vanessa reads through their father's old documents, dusty files that seem to whisper secrets each time they're cracked open. Vanessa, sharp and perceptive, has begun to suspect that their father's disappearance years ago was not the accident everyone claimed. She's been tracking clues-coded messages in margins, odd bank transfers, and a recurring name that no one in the family will talk about: Martin. That name, scrawled in the corner of a VHS tape labeled simply "Beyond the Gates," sparks a sequence of events that quickly spirals into danger. When Vanessa takes the tape to a local tech shop to digitize it, she finds more than static and bad tracking lines. The footage shows an old clubhouse somewhere opulent, filled with shadowy figures in masks and in the background, unmistakably Martin. But there's more. The camera zooms slightly on a younger Joey Armstrong laughing beside Martin, both of them clinking glasses while a man in a white blazer pours drinks. That man is Kenneth. Kenneth, the enigmatic bartender at the exclusive Country Pines Club, becomes Vanessa's next target. She makes contact through an invitation-only event, disguising herself as a new member's guest. Kenneth recognizes her almost immediately. There's a flicker of surprise in his eyes, followed by a flash of cold calculation. He plays along, offering drinks and idle chatter, but Vanessa knows he's stalling. He disappears halfway through the evening, and Vanessa tails him, but loses him in the service corridors of the club. Randy Parker, Joey Armstrong's right-hand man, is introduced as the quiet shadow that always lingers behind the scenes. He's former military, sharp, loyal to a fault, but not without a conscience. Joey trusts him with everything, which is why it's Randy who gets assigned to clean up the mess Vanessa has started making. Joey doesn't know how far Vanessa has gotten with her investigation, but Kenneth has raised alarms. Randy is dispatched to put an end to the leaks, whatever that may entail. Randy tracks Kenneth down in the early hours of the morning, just outside the club's back gate, where Kenneth is smoking nervously and looking over his shoulder. The confrontation is sharp. Randy pulls a silenced pistol from under his coat and demands answers. Kenneth stalls, pleading that he didn't tell her everything, just enough to scare her off. But Randy knows the game. Kenneth has always been slippery. The truth about Martin, about what happened to him, and why Joey has tried to erase every trace, was bound to surface eventually. What Randy doesn't know is that Kenneth has been recording conversations. He's kept his own insurance, and in one particularly damning clip, Joey admits to having Martin taken care of after a failed business betrayal. Kenneth, desperate to save himself, offers the file to Randy. It's on a drive in his locker inside the club. If Randy lets him live, he'll hand it over. But Randy, ever the pragmatist, doesn't trust the promise. He hesitates, his finger tight on the trigger. Kenneth takes a step forward. A mistake. The silenced shot rings quietly through the trees, and Kenneth slumps to the ground. His secrets buried for the moment. Hours later, Randy sits with Joey in the penthouse suite overlooking the city. Joey is drinking too heavily, his mood unstable. He talks about Vanessa with a seething fury, about how she's trying to trap him, to bring everything crashing down. He's convinced she knows more than she lets on. Joey shows Randy a surveillance image of Vanessa entering the club in disguise. He slams his glass down and swears she has to be dealt with. Randy tries to dissuade him. He reminds Joey of the fallout if anything were to happen to a McBride. He suggests other options: discredit her, leak false information, pay her off. But Joey's rage is beyond logic. To him, Vanessa represents a threat that cannot be reasoned with. And Randy, though loyal, finds himself torn. He remembers Vanessa from years ago. Not well, but enough to know she's not the villain Joey paints her as. And something in Kenneth's fear made Randy believe that maybe Joey's version of events is not entirely clean. That maybe Martin's disappearance really was orchestrated. That maybe Vanessa is closer to the truth than anyone realizes. Randy follows Joey to the confrontation. It's set in a parking garage below a shuttered hotel once owned by the McBride family. Vanessa has been lured there under the guise of meeting someone who knew Martin. Doug comes too, reluctantly, after Vanessa confides in him that she may be walking into something dangerous. She doesn't tell him everything, just enough to make him worry. When Joey steps out of the shadows, gun in hand, Doug freezes. Vanessa's eyes flick from Joey to Randy, who lingers at the edge, partially in shadow. Joey accuses Vanessa of betrayal, of setting him up. She tries to explain that she just wants to know what happened to her father, but Joey's beyond reason. The gun shakes in his hand. Randy steps forward slowly, trying to calm the situation. He tells Joey this isn't the way, that if he pulls the trigger, there's no going back. Joey turns on him, accusing him of being weak, of forgetting who saved him, who gave him purpose. Randy doesn't answer. His hand hovers near his own weapon. Then Joey raises the gun toward Vanessa. Doug yells. Vanessa doesn't flinch. She's already made peace with this moment, knowing it might come to this. The air is tense, electric. The silence just before the shot is unbearable. And then the gun goes off. The sound echoes like thunder in the closed space. Doug stumbles back, mouth open. Randy's eyes are wide with shock. Vanessa crumples to the ground. But what no one saw, what Randy realizes only a second too late, is that Joey didn't just aim. He intended to kill. Randy's hesitation might have cost Vanessa her life. He rushes forward, kneeling beside her, trying to stop the bleeding. Joey, meanwhile, stands shaking, breathing hard, realization creeping over him. He just crossed a line there's no return from. Doug drops beside his sister, screaming for help that won't come. The garage feels like a tomb. The fallout is about to be seismic, but the storm is only beginning. Vanessa's body lay still as Randy knelt beside her, pressing a hand to the wound, trying to stem the blood that pooled beneath her. Doug, paralyzed by the horror, could only clutch her hand, whispering her name in disbelief. Joey stood frozen, his gun trembling in his grip, as if the weight of what he'd done had just now begun to settle in. But even in the chaos, Randy's instincts sharpened. He realized Joey had planned this moment, had rehearsed it, had known that Vanessa would come too close. But something was wrong. As Randy applied more pressure, he felt a shift in the way Vanessa breathed. Shallow, but present. She was alive barely. And Joey didn't seem to notice. Randy turned slightly, enough to block Joey's view, enough to hide the subtle movement of Vanessa's chest. Randy's mind raced. If Joey thought she was dead, maybe there was still a chance to turn this around. Joey finally moved, tucking the gun back into his waistband. It had to be done, he muttered. She was playing us. You don't know that, Randy replied, his voice steady. You didn't give her a chance to speak. Joey glared at him. You're starting to sound like her. Randy didn't respond. He couldn't. Not yet. He needed to get Vanessa out of here, needed to buy time. He told Doug to keep her still and quiet, and whispered just loud enough for Joey to hear, "We need to leave before someone hears the shot." Joey hesitated, then nodded. They disappeared into the dark of the garage, unaware that Doug had already called someone. Not the police, but someone more dangerous, a man Doug hadn't spoken to in years. A man who once worked with Martin. A man named Grady who still had debts to settle. As Doug cradled his sister and waited for Grady's arrival, Randy drove Joey back to his condo. The air was tense. Joey kept talking, trying to justify his actions, but Randy wasn't listening. His mind was back in the garage. He'd felt Vanessa's pulse. Weak, yes, but real. That meant Joey's plan had failed in a crucial way, and if Joey ever found out, Vanessa's life would be in danger again. Randy knew he couldn't stay loyal forever. Something had changed. Meanwhile, Vanessa was being rushed through the back corridors of the hospital under a fake name. Grady had connections. He'd once been deep in the same world Joey now controlled, and though time had turned him into a ghost, he still knew how to pull strings. Doug stayed by Vanessa's side while Grady began pulling together pieces of the story Vanessa had left behind: notes, files, even Kenneth's phone, which Doug had picked from the scene before they fled. Grady listened to the audio recordings and watched the old footage of Martin and Joey laughing together. When he heard the full extent of Kenneth's recording a part about Martin's betrayal, the backroom deal gone wrong, the desperate move to disappear someone who knew too much, understood the stakes. Vanessa had been right. And now, the only chance to expose Joey's crimes lay in assembling undeniable proof before Joey found out Vanessa had survived. Back in the city, Joey began to unravel. He noticed Randy had grown quiet. Too quiet. He began assigning other men to shadow Randy, to monitor his movements. When Randy noticed the tale, he knew Joey's paranoia had hit full tilt. He decided it was time to act. He visited a storage unit he'd kept secret even from Joey. Inside was a cache of weapons, burner phones, and a dossier of everything he'd learned over the years, including the part about Martin's last day. Randy had seen things Joey thought were buried. A ledger. A confession tape. A transfer of assets that didn't make sense. Now he compiled all of it and sent it to an encrypted server. One he could activate if anything happened to him. He also left a message for Grady. He didn't know if the man was still alive, but if he watched, know what to do. Joey, desperate to secure his empire, began reaching out to old contacts. He offered money for silence, threatened those who hesitated. But the walls were closing in. The moment he ordered a hit on Randy, the balance shifted. Randy intercepted the men sent to kill him and sent one back to Joe with a message: "She's still alive. And she's coming for you." Joey lost control. He tore through his apartment, destroyed files, smashed hard drives. He knew now that the only way to win was to eliminate all threats. Vanessa. Randy. Even Doug. The final confrontation was inevitable. It came one stormy night in the same country club where Kenneth once served drinks. The club had been closed for renovations, but Joey still had the keys. He lured Doug there with a message supposedly from Randy. Vanessa, though still recovering, insisted on going too. Grady geared her up. She wore Kevlar. Carried a weapon. She wasn't coming to talk. Randy was already inside, waiting in the main lounge where chandeliers swayed from the wind and shadows danced in the firelight. Joey arrived alone. Or so he thought. But Vanessa was watching from the security booth, through cameras Kenneth had once installed and never removed. Doug entered minutes later, confused and unarmed. Joey greeted him with a sneer. "Family loyalty, huh? Funny how fast that crumbles." Randy stepped out of the dark. "It ends tonight, Joey." Joey pulled his gun, just as he had in the garage. But this time, Vanessa moved first. She entered from the hallway, gun aimed, her voice clear and calm. "Drop it, Joey. You lost." Joey turned, shocked to see her alive. That moment of hesitation was all Randy needed. He lunged, knocking Joey's weapon to the floor. They fought, hard and brutal. Randy, stronger, quicker. But Joey, driven by desperation, pulled a blade and cut deep into Randy's side. Vanessa fired a warning shot. Joey stopped, panting. She said nothing. Just aimed again. "You don't have the nerve," Joey spat. "I don't need to," she said. "Everything is already out. Your voice. Kenneth's tapes. The ledgers. They're on a secure server. If anything happens to us, the whole world sees it." Joey looked around, like an animal trapped. He reached for the gun. Vanessa fired. This time, there was no hesitation. Doug rushed to Randy, pressing cloth against the wound. Grady entered moments later, weapon raised, but it wasn't needed. The threat was over. The empire Joey built, one of fear, betrayal, and secrets, collapsed in a single night. In the days that followed, Vanessa and Doug held a press conference. Randy, recovering, disappeared quietly. He left no forwarding address. Grady returned to the shadows. And the world began to ask questions about Martin McBride again, questions that now had answers. The country club was shut down permanently. The gates welded closed. But the story of what happened there, of who bled and who betrayed, would echo for years to come. And Vanessa, scarred but unbroken, finally stood in the ruins of her family's legacy, not as a victim, but as its reckoner. In the months that followed, the ripple effects of Joey's downfall reached far beyond the club's walls. Investigations opened into several of his business fronts, offshore accounts, shell companies, bribes buried deep within the city's infrastructure. Former allies came forward, some out of fear, others for leverage. The FBI subpoenaed the financial records released through Vanessa's server. What started as a private family tragedy exploded into a sweeping federal probe. Vanessa, thrust into the national spotlight, handled it with the same cold clarity she'd shown in that final confrontation. She testified before a grand jury, laid out every piece of evidence. Her words were broadcast and analyzed, turned into headlines and documentaries. She didn't seek fame, but she couldn't avoid it either. What she wanted more than justice was truth. And truth came with consequences. Doug took a different path. After the press frenzy faded, he quietly moved to another state, carrying with him a sense of guilt he couldn't shake. He'd almost let fear paralyze him. Almost lost his sister. He didn't want attention, only distance. Grady remained in the shadows, but his role behind the curtain didn't go unnoticed by certain agencies. One night, Vanessa received an unmarked envelope. Inside, a single photo of Grady boarding a plane, the words "Thank you" scribbled on the back. He had done what he came to do, and now he was gone for good. Randy, however, couldn't disappear so easily. Though presumed dead by some, rumors spread through the underground. Whispers of a man who'd turned against his own boss. Some called him a traitor, others a hero. Vanessa tried to find him once, through a mutual contact. She got back only a voicemail. "You did what no one else could. That's enough. Stay safe." In the end, the tapes, the secrets, and the bloodshed changed more than just a handful of lives. They changed the legacy of the McBride name. The family, once wrapped in silence and illusion, became a symbol of reckoning, of consequence, of how darkness, no matter how deeply buried, eventually surfaces. And those rusted gates that once guarded the estate? They remain sealed, but not forgotten. To some, they're a warning. To others, a grave marker. But for Vanessa, they are something else entirely, a promise that the truth, once found, cannot be caged again.